Overbuilt used to be an engineering standard, not a marketing word, not a nostalgic feeling, an actual design philosophy where engineers specified more bearing surface, more iron, more material than the application strictly required because the cost of failure in the field exceeded the cost of the extra metal at the factory. The Cummins 5.9 demonstrates this. Its main bearing caps are held by 4 bolts each, 2 threading down through the cap and 2 threading in from the sides, totaling 28 bolts securing the lower end. That's not typical. That's an engine originally designed for industrial equipment like tractors and excavators, then dropped into a pickup truck essentially unchanged. Modern trucks reverse that philosophy almost completely. Fuel economy regulations, emissions requirements, and margin pressure pushed engineers towards smaller displacement, forced induction, tighter tolerances, and complex after-treatment systems, all of which work genuinely well when everything functions correctly and fail expensively when anything doesn't. Those regulations weren't arbitrary bureaucratic decisions either. Older diesels emitted genuinely harmful particulates and nitrogen oxides at rates causing measurable public health consequences, and the complexity everyone complains about exists specifically to address that documented problem. Tighter tolerances also enable genuinely real improvements. Modern engines produce dramatically more power per liter, run cleaner, start more reliably in cold weather, and deliver better fuel economy, none of which happened by accident or without genuine engineering effort behind it. Here's the honest framing for tonight's list. Every truck here has genuine weaknesses I'm going to name specifically, none of them meet modern safety standards, and several will cost real money to bring back to reliable condition. What they share is a mechanical foundation engineered before complexity became the default assumption, built during a window when meeting a durability target mattered more to an engineering department than shaving cost out of a bill of materials one component at a time. Depreciation already finished on every entry here. These trucks hit the flat part of their value curve decades ago, meaning a well-maintained example bought today will likely be worth something genuinely similar in 5 years, which no new truck can honestly claim. Insurance costs reflect that low valuation directly. Comprehensive and collision coverage on a vehicle worth $12,000 costs dramatically less than the same coverage on a $70,000 new truck, a savings compounding every single month of ownership. Let's count down all 9 trucks now. Each entry names the specific engine, the documented mileage reputation, the known failure points, and what a buyer should genuinely inspect before handing anyone money for one. 9. Nissan Hardbody. The Hardbody is genuinely underappreciated in America. Sold from 1986 through 1997, this compact truck earned its nickname from double-wall bed construction, and the KA24E 4-cylinder that powered most examples developed a reputation for simply refusing to quit under abuse. Simplicity defines the entire engineering approach here. Port fuel injection rather than anything clever, a timing chain rather than a belt requiring periodic replacement, and a cast iron block with genuinely conservative power output that never stressed any component particularly hard during a normal operation. Double-wall bed construction earned that nickname. That extra layer of steel added weight and cost that a competitor could have skipped, which is precisely the kind of decision that stopped happening once accountants gained more influence over engineering choices. Rust is the actual enemy on these. The mechanical package routinely survives well past 200,000 miles, but frames and bed supports in salt belt states corrode aggressively, meaning a southern truck and a northern truck wearing identical badges are effectively 2 different purchases entirely. Parts availability has genuinely thinned out considerably. Common maintenance items remain easy to source, but specific trim pieces, interior components, and certain body panels now require patience and salvage yard hunting rather than a simple order from a local parts counter. Pricing stays genuinely low across the market. Hardbody examples rarely command the enthusiast premiums that inflate Toyota pickup prices, which means a buyer willing to accept a less famous badge frequently gets comparable durability for meaningfully less money spent. 8. Chevrolet CK Series. The CK represents an entire disappeared category. Built through 1999 before Silverado replaced it, these trucks carried the small block Chevrolet V8 in various displacements, an engine family so thoroughly proven that GM built variations of it for roughly half a century. The small block's advantage is parts availability. No engine in American history has more aftermarket support, more remanufactured components, or more mechanics who understand it intuitively, which converts almost any failure into a routine repair rather than a diagnostic mystery. Fuel injection versions specifically deserve preference here. Throttle body injection arrived on these trucks in the late 80s, delivering meaningfully better cold starting and drivability than carbureted examples, while retaining nearly all of the mechanical simplicity buyers actually want. Half a century of production created ecosystems. Every parts store carries small block components, every mechanic understands the architecture, and remanufactured engines remain genuinely affordable, which converts catastrophic failure into a manageable weekend project rather than a total loss. Watch for cracked exhaust manifolds here specifically. That's a well-documented weak point across the small block family, along with intake gasket failures on certain years, both genuinely fixable but worth factoring into any purchase price negotiation, honestly. Body panels and cab corners rust predictably. These trucks develop corrosion in consistent locations that any experienced buyer knows to check, and catching it early converts an expensive structural repair into a manageable cosmetic one instead. 7. Toyota T100. Most people forgot this truck existed entirely. Toyota built the T100 from 1993 through 1998 in relatively small numbers before replacing it with the Tundra, leaving it as an obscure footnote between two far more famous nameplates. The engineering underneath reflects Toyota's best era. Conservative, overbuilt V6 power paired with a straightforward chassis carrying very little that could fail electronically, built during the period when Toyota's reliability reputation was being actively earned rather than simply inherited. Frame rust is the genuine deal breaker here. Toyota issued a recall and buyback program covering trucks from this era over corrosion severe enough that beds could separate from frames, and the company repurchased thousands of affected examples rather than attempting repairs. Any T100 requires a lift inspection first. That frame examination isn't optional and isn't something a flashlight in a parking lot accomplishes, because everything else about this truck is genuinely excellent, and the frame is the one thing that ends the conversation entirely. Production volume genuinely limits available inventory here. Toyota never sold these in large numbers, meaning finding a clean example requires patience measured in months rather than weekends, and expanding a search radius considerably beyond a local market. Obscurity actually works in a buyer's favor. Sellers frequently price these without understanding what they own, and because almost nobody actively searches for a T100 specifically, a patient buyer faces genuinely less competition than they would hunting a Tacoma. 6. Ford Ranger, original generation. The old Ranger sold in enormous numbers. Ford built it from 1983 through 2011, and the 4.0-liter V6 in later examples earned a reputation as close to unkillable as any mainstream gasoline engine ever achieved. Low stress operation explains that longevity clearly. This engine never made impressive power for its displacement, which meant it spent its entire working life loafing well below its mechanical limits rather than working hard to compensate for small displacement the way modern turbocharged engines do. The Mazda B series is mechanically completely identical. Mazda sold rebadged Rangers for decades, and because almost nobody searches for a pickup under the Mazda name, those examples routinely sell for meaningfully less money while delivering exactly the same engineering underneath. Frame and leaf spring mounts need inspection. Rust attacks these trucks the same way it attacks every compact pickup of the era, and a clean-looking bed frequently hides structural corrosion underneath that no amount of engine reliability can offset. Manual transmission examples deserve genuine preference here. The 5-speed manual avoids the automatic's known weaknesses entirely while adding a layer of mechanical simplicity that fits the entire philosophy driving tonight's list from beginning to end. 5. Dodge Ram with the 5.9 Cummins 24-valve common rail. 2003 changed everything for Cummins. That year introduced common rail direct injection to the 5.9 liter, using a Bosch high-pressure system and CP3 injection pump with electronic control that improved both performance and reliability simultaneously. The CP3 pump proved genuinely quite exceptional. Independent sources describe it as one of the most reliable diesel fuel systems ever produced, which matters enormously given that fuel system failures on later diesel designs routinely produce repair bills running well into 5 figures. This generation kept cast iron everywhere important. Cast iron block, cast iron cylinder head, forged steel crankshaft, and forged connecting rods with no exhaust gas recirculation and no diesel particulate filter, making it the last genuinely simple modern diesel. Owners routinely surpass 300,000 miles. Reports consistently indicate that aside from routine maintenance, engine internals on these last the lifetime of the truck itself, with the surrounding vehicle typically wearing out well before the powertrain does. Modification potential genuinely adds to the appeal. These engines handle 500 horsepower on stock internals according to independent sources, which means owners can meaningfully increase capability without approaching the mechanical limits the factory built into the design. Automatic transmissions represent the actual weak point. The engine outlasts everything, but the automatic behind it on certain years does not. So budgeting for a transmission rebuild or seeking a manual example both represent genuinely sensible approaches. 4. Ford F-Series with the 300 Inline 6. The 300 Inline 6 is legendary. Ford built this engine from 1965 through 1996, and it became famous specifically for outlasting the trucks wrapped around it, which is a genuinely unusual thing for any engine to accomplish. 31 production years tells you something. Manufacturers discontinue engines that cause warranty problems, and an engine surviving 3 decades of production with minimal fundamental changes represents a genuine engineering endorsement from the company building it. 7 main bearings support that entire crankshaft. An inline 6 is inherently balanced in ways AV configuration simply isn't, producing less vibration and less stress on bearings and mounts across hundreds of thousands of miles of operation. Power output was genuinely modest here throughout. This engine never impressed anyone on a specification sheet, and that conservative output is precisely why it lasted. Because an engine producing well below its structural capability experiences far less wear per mile driven. Carbureted early examples need genuinely honest consideration. Fuel-injected versions from the late 80s onward deliver dramatically better cold starting and drivability. And for anyone planning actual daily use rather than restoration, that distinction genuinely matters. Torque delivery suits genuine actual work perfectly. This engine produces its usable output down low where a working truck actually operates, rather than requiring high revolutions to accomplish anything, which is precisely why fleets ran them for decades without complaint. Fuel economy disappoints by any modern measure. Expect mid-teens at absolute best, which for a low-mileage owner matters little, and for a daily highway commuter becomes a genuinely significant ongoing expense worth calculating honestly beforehand. 3. Ford Super Duty with the 7.3 power stroke. The 7.3 earned its reputation. Produced through 2003, this V8 diesel delivers roughly 235 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque, modest by modern standards and precisely why it lasts. Owners regularly report 500,000 miles. Independent sources note that with proper maintenance, a 1999 through 2003 Super Duty can genuinely exceed 500,000 miles, and a used example between 150 and 250,000 represents excellent value. Simple, robust engineering drives that entire longevity. Hydraulically actuated fuel injection using engine oil pressure, durable internal hard parts, and an air-to-air intercooler combine into a package with genuinely low documented failure rates across enormous production volume. Real-world fuel economy adds practical appeal. Owners report 15 to 20 miles per gallon, which gives this truck a genuine edge for anyone still using one for serious mileage rather than occasional weekend duty. Injector and glow plug issues do occur. High-pressure oil pump problems and camshaft position sensor failures show up in owner reports, all manageable and well-documented, none of them approaching the catastrophic fuel system failures plaguing certain later diesels. Aftermarket support for this engine remains enormous. Decades of production volume created a genuinely deep parts ecosystem, and most independent diesel shops can diagnose and repair these without specialized factory equipment or manufacturer-specific software licenses. Later, Power Stroke generations tell different stories. The 6-liter that replaced this engine developed a genuinely troubled reputation, which is precisely why clean 7.3 examples command premium prices in today's used market. 2. Toyota pickup with the 22R and 20 Tour. This engine achieved genuinely mythological status somehow. Toyota built the 22R and its fuel-injected 22RE variant through 1995, and the reputation for reaching extraordinary mileage with minimal intervention is genuinely earned rather than internet folklore. Timing chain design deserves specific mention here. Unlike belt-driven engines requiring periodic replacement, this uses a chain, though the plastic guides do wear, and a rattling chain on startup is the specific warning sign every prospective buyer should listen for carefully. Cast iron block, aluminum head, conservative output. That combination produces an engine operating well within its limits throughout normal use, which is precisely the formula. Every genuinely long-lived engine on tonight's list shares regardless of manufacturer or displacement. Fuel-injected variants outperform carbureted ones considerably. The 22RE delivers better cold starting, better drivability, and better fuel economy than the earlier carbureted 22R, making it the version worth actively seeking out. Frame rust ended more of these trucks. The same corrosion issues affecting the T100 apply here, and the tragedy of this truck is how many perfectly healthy engines got scrapped because the structure underneath them dissolved first. Clean examples command genuine premiums today now. Enthusiast demand has pushed prices meaningfully above where a 25-year-old compact truck logically belongs, which is itself the clearest possible evidence of how much people trust this specific engine. Head gasket issues affect certain specific years. Some 22RE examples developed head gasket problems, a known and documented weakness worth researching by model year before purchasing rather than assuming every example carries identical reliability. Toyota's global reputation genuinely started with these. Developing markets across multiple continents ran these trucks under conditions no American owner ever approaches, and their survival under that abuse built the reputation Toyota still trades on decades afterward. 1. Dodge Ram with the 5.9 12-valve Cummins. This is genuinely the holy grail, honestly. Dodge dropped the 5.9-liter 12-valve Cummins into the Ram 2500 and 3500 in 1989, and the diesel pickup market fundamentally changed that year. The engine came from industrial equipment directly. Cummins originally designed it for tractors and excavators in the mid-80s, meaning it arrived in a pickup truck already engineered for continuous duty cycles no consumer vehicle would ever demand of it. That origin story explains everything downstream honestly. An engine built to run continuously in a tractor for thousands of hours faces trivially light duty in a pickup truck driven a few hours daily, which is precisely why these last as long as they do. 1989 changed diesel trucks permanently. Before Dodge made this move, diesel pickups were a niche curiosity, and afterward, every manufacturer had to answer a competitor offering genuine industrial durability at consumer pricing. 7 massive main bearings anchor everything below. Forged internals and a cast iron block round out an engine that independent sources describe as overbuilt from the very beginning, which is exactly the phrase that stopped appearing in engineering conversations decades ago. Purely mechanical injection eliminates enormous total complexity. No electronic engine management, no emissions after treatment, no sensors interpreting conditions and adjusting parameters, just a mechanical P-pump delivering fuel according to physical linkage and spring pressure. Nothing electronic means nothing electronic ever fails. A truck that runs without any computer cannot be disabled by a failed sensor, a corrupted module, or a wiring harness problem, which genuinely eliminates an entire category of modern failure modes completely. Diagnosis stays genuinely within reach of anyone. Problems on these engines announce themselves mechanically through sound, smell, and observable symptoms rather than requiring a scan tool interpreting codes generated by systems most owners cannot inspect directly. 3 to 500,000 miles standard. Owners with proper maintenance routinely reach those figures, and when something does go wrong, the diagnosis is genuinely mechanical rather than mysterious, which is precisely why farmers and DIY owners still hunt these specifically. The killer dowel pin is famously weak. A small alignment dowel in the timing gear housing can vibrate loose and fall into the timing gears, potentially causing catastrophic failure, though addressing it proactively is a genuinely manageable and well-documented fix. Output was modest by any modern standard. Early trucks produced around 160 horsepower, a figure that sounds almost comical today, and that under-stressed operation is the entire reason these engines outlast everything built since. Cummins engines have the most documented millions. Among all diesel manufacturers, this family accumulated more verified extreme mileage cases than any competitor, which is genuinely the strongest possible argument any engine can make for itself. Modification potential borders on genuinely absurd here. Simple P-pump adjustments, turning up fuel delivery via adjustment screws, or installing a different fuel plate produce meaningful power increases without touching internal components at all. The surrounding truck rarely matches the engine. Dodge built the vehicle around this power plant to considerably lower standards, meaning transmissions, front ends, and interiors all wear out while the engine keeps running essentially indefinitely. Transmission choice genuinely determines long-term satisfaction. Manual-equipped examples avoid the automatic weaknesses these trucks are known for, and given that the engine will outlast everything, starting with the stronger transmission, matters enormously. The honest takeaway. Now I have to complicate all 9. Every truck on tonight's list is old, and old means safety standards from a completely different era, with crash protection, airbag coverage, and structural design that modern vehicles improved on substantially. Modern safety technology simply doesn't exist here. No stability control on most examples, no side curtain airbags, no automatic emergency braking, no blind spot monitoring, and crash structures engineered before current testing protocols existed at all. That gap matters enormously for family transportation. Anyone regularly carrying children should weigh mechanical durability against crash protection honestly, because a truck lasting forever provides genuinely no benefit if a collision goes badly in the meantime. Braking performance also lags dramatically behind modern. Rear drum brakes, smaller rotors, and anti-lock systems either primitive or entirely absent mean stopping distances substantially longer than any current truck delivers under identical conditions. Fuel economy genuinely disappoints on most entries. The 300 Inline 6 and the small block V8 both drink fuel by modern standards, and anyone driving significant annual mileage should honestly calculate that expense before romanticizing mechanical simplicity. Run the actual annual math before buying. A truck returning 13 miles per gallon versus a modern one returning 20 costs meaningfully more every single year, and across a decade that difference genuinely rivals what a newer vehicle would have cost outright. Diesel entries perform considerably better here, though. The 7.3 power stroke returns 15 to 20 miles per gallon according to owner reports, which for a heavy-duty truck of that era represents genuinely competitive efficiency even today. Emissions regulations affect diesel purchases quite specifically. Some states restrict registration of older diesels or require inspections these trucks cannot pass. And researching local rules before buying prevents an expensive lesson after the money has already changed hands. Buying one means buying a project frequently. A truck that survived 30 years still accumulated 30 years of deferred maintenance, worn bushings, tired seals, and aging rubber components, all of which cost real money to address properly. Budget realistically for immediate deferred maintenance work. Even a genuinely well-maintained example typically needs several $1,000s of attention within the first year, and buyers treating the purchase price as the total cost consistently regret that assumption. Rust genuinely ends more trucks than failure. Every single entry on tonight's list has a frame that can corrode past structural safety, and a pre-purchase inspection focused specifically on structure matters more than any compression test. Southern and Western examples command genuine premiums. Trucks that spent their lives in states without road salt survive structurally in ways salt belt examples simply cannot. And paying to transport a clean Southern truck frequently costs less than repairing a local rusty one. Comfort and refinement lag dramatically behind today. Road noise, seat design, climate control performance, and ride quality on these trucks reflect standards from decades ago, and a long highway trip reveals that gap immediately. Modern trucks genuinely do many things better. Towing capacity, braking performance, crash safety, fuel economy under load, and cold weather starting have all improved substantially, and pretending otherwise would misrepresent the actual engineering trade-offs involved. Payload and towing ratings improved dramatically too. A modern half-ton frequently outperforms an older three-quarter ton in both categories, which genuinely matters for anyone actually using a truck for serious work rather than occasional light duty. The complexity criticism deserves genuine nuance too. Modern emission systems exist because older diesels emitted genuinely harmful particulates and nitrogen oxides, and the complexity everyone complains about serves a real public health purpose beyond simple regulatory box checking. Current diesels have improved considerably as well. The 6.7-liter Cummins currently ranks as the most reliable diesel in medium and heavy-duty trucks, according to industry sources, with Powerstroke second and Duramax third in that same assessment. That engine has run over 30 years. The Cummins Inline 6 survived 3 decades of production and continuous upgrades while remaining fundamentally the same architecture, which is itself the strongest argument that overbuilt engineering still exists somewhere in the modern market. Maintenance history matters more than model year. A neglected legendary engine will fail before a well-maintained ordinary one, and service records genuinely predict future reliability better than any reputation attached to a nameplate or an engine family. Ask specifically about oil change intervals, honestly. Every engine on tonight's list tolerates neglect better than modern equivalents, but tolerating neglect and surviving it indefinitely are genuinely different things, and consistent maintenance separates the survivors from the casualties. Previous use matters enormously for diesel purchases. A truck that towed heavy loads continuously accumulated different wear than one that idled around town. And understanding how a specific example actually spent its life predicts remaining service better than odometer readings alone. Specialist mechanics are genuinely worth actively finding. Independent shops focused on older diesels or specific truck platforms accumulate knowledge no general repair facility matches. And locating one before you need one is genuinely smart preparation. Insurance and registration costs run genuinely low. Older trucks carry minimal comprehensive and collision premiums, and in many states, registration fees scale with vehicle value, which meaningfully offsets the higher fuel and maintenance expenses these vehicles demand. Property tax treatment varies considerably by state. Jurisdictions assessing annual vehicle taxes based on value charge dramatically less for a 20-year-old truck than a new one, another quiet ongoing savings rarely mentioned in any purchase comparison. The real lesson isn't old beating new. It's that engineering priorities genuinely shifted from building components stronger than necessary toward building them exactly strong enough while adding capability, and understanding that shift explains every entry on tonight's entire list. Learning basic maintenance changes the entire equation. These trucks reward an owner willing to handle oil changes, brake jobs, and basic diagnosis personally, converting what would be expensive shop visits into affordable weekend work with ordinary hand tools. Online communities preserve genuinely invaluable knowledge here. Forums dedicated to each specific truck contain decades of accumulated troubleshooting, part number cross-references, and repair walkthroughs that make ownership dramatically easier than it would otherwise be. Choose based on your actual situation honestly. If you need a daily driver with modern safety for a family, buy something new, and if you need a mechanically simple work truck you can maintain yourself for decades, these 9 remain genuinely difficult to beat. Plenty of owners run both, keeping something modern for family duty and something from tonight's list for work, hauling, and everything they would rather not put miles on a new vehicle doing. Walking away remains genuinely the strongest position. Plenty of these trucks exist across the country. No single example is irreplaceable, and a buyer willing to keep looking rather than settling almost always ends up with a meaningfully better vehicle. Patience genuinely separates good purchases from regrettable. The right example of any truck on tonight's list exists somewhere, and spending 3 additional months searching costs far less than buying the wrong one immediately and discovering its problems afterward. The best truck is the one maintained. Every legendary engine on tonight's list will fail if neglected, and every ordinary engine will last if cared for properly, which means the previous owner matters more than the badge on the tailgate ever did. Buy the maintenance record first and the nameplate second, because a thick folder of receipts predicts the next decade far better than any reputation ever will. Nobody builds these particular trucks anymore, honestly. The regulations changed, the market changed, the engineering priorities changed, and whether that represents genuine progress or genuine loss depends entirely on what you personally need a truck to actually do for you. What's genuinely certain is that the specific combination these 9 trucks offered, mechanical simplicity paired with deliberate overbuilding, is not something any manufacturer currently sells at any price. And that combination is precisely why these particular machines keep running long after everything built alongside them has already been scrapped.